have a moment of silence. Immediately after, we'll do the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May you be seated. Everybody got a chance to read the minutes?
I'll move that they be accepted.
Motion's been made to accept the minutes. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Ayes have it. Motion is carried. I have one letter. I have one letter of correspondence. It was on the Hudson Extension Agent, Dodgers County Commission, from Deborah Matheny, Secretary, West Virginia Dodgers County Extension Office. Termination of full-time employment. Please be advised that I will end my full-time employment and resign as Secretary of the Dodgers County Extension Service effective July 31st, 2013. This action will enable me to better assist my grandchildren and other family. I would be interested in a part-time position in Extension Service or other county department, if something is available at this time or in the future. Please allow me to convey my appreciation for the opportunities for personal and professional development during my 14 years of employment. I have enjoyed working in my own county and community with friends and other community members. Thank you. Okay, let's go to public comment. Okay. Kay Hudson, you're first on the list.
Well, I gather that you no longer need cookies for the 150th anniversary of the state of West Virginia at the celebration. That you may, have a cake, which is wonderful. But in the process of going to CEOS to check out whether or not we would be interested in providing them, which we would, but would have. That is in past tense now. I talked to Norma Bowyer, who is the president of the CEOS County Council. And Norma seemed to be very agreeable to participating in a presentation for the program. She did an incredible job of writing a skit for the Western area CEOS meeting that was held out at Park. She placed it in the time of the statehood of West Virginia, and in that particular instance, it revolved around the Fitz-Randolphs, the Tars, and the Bees. But from that, she did a great deal of research. So if whoever is in charge of the program, if I can know who that is, I would suggest she talk to that person. She's a very reasonable person, very articulate, and I'm sure she'll be able to gauge it to the audience. It sounds like it might be young and old. I understand now you might open it up to the public. But I would like to know who's in charge of the program so I can refer Norma to that person. And I also want to give whoever that is some kind of endorsement of Norma. She's a very talented woman.
You talking about the what we're going to have at the park? Is that what you're talking about?
That's right.
You know part of that?
I think Jim Messenger and Bill Davis are, they're both working on it.
Okay.
And it's a collaborative effort. And the idea was to have it in the afternoon. The thing is, for the kids who are attending camp, their normal swimming time is from 1 to 4. So we're probably not going to hold their attention too long. But I would like to see the public invited. And it's still in the formative stages. But if you called them, either one of them, and let them know. The idea the other night was, I guess it was last night, was that we could get a sheet cake or maybe even more cakes, kind of like Happy Birthday West Virginia, with maybe the state seal on the cake or something along that line. And have it at the stage. Beth just told me that she had an extra West Virginia flag, and we can present that either to the church camp or the park as part of the activities. And you know, we don't. It's going to be, well, we're assuming it's going to be hot. And there's, you know, they have tents for the fair, but it's out in the open. So assuming the weather's sunny and hot, you know, it's going to be, you don't want to have too much, I don't think. But anyway, that's pretty much the extent of it right at the time.
I did check on, you know, the thing that goes with cookies, which is something to drink. Talked to one that works out there with the youngsters, and she said they always have Kool-Aid. So that part can be taken care of. So you have Kool-Aid.
Great.
That answer your question? Okay, next on the list is Tammy Beamer.
I have 4 questions that I want to ask Mr. Tennant and the County Commission concerning the floodplain. The federal government has already written a floodplain ordinance that is covers the nationwide everything. Why doesn't the County Commission go ahead and make the motion just to accept that as your floodplain ordinance? That's the first question. Second question is, why can't the residential, agricultural, and commercial use be separated into different sections? So, to construct a well or something, you know, in a floodplain, and construct a home in a floodplain, or, for instance, a chicken house, you know, there would be different standards there. Why isn't this broken down and divided up to where the residential people don't necessarily have to go through all the stressors that you have to go through for commercial use? The third question is, what has been changed in the floodplain since our last meeting, since people made comment? Has anything been changed in this, the one that they're presenting tonight?
On second reading, no, it's the same ordinance that was on first reading.
So in other words, the last time whenever we spoke, nothing got changed out of the comments that were made here?
Oh no, there were changes. No, absolutely, there were changes.
From last meeting to this meeting?
Now wait a minute. The last meeting was first reading of this ordinance. There have been no changes from the first reading to the second reading.
Okay, and this is for the County Commission. How much is Mr. Tennant charging you, and have you received a bill?
Okay, I can answer all 3 of those very quickly. I'll do them in reverse order. I have not billed the County Commission as of yet for any of my work, and I believe I'm on basically a 1-year anniversary here from the first day I came down to Dutchess County on the EQT case. Secondly, with respect to the division or classification of residential, commercial, or industrial, as the Federal Emergency Management Agency defines, they're protecting the floodplain. The rules cannot be different whether you're an individual or the largest corporation in the world. It's the same. They are protecting the floodplain for the citizens of this county. And that's why there cannot be different standards for residents or individuals versus small companies or large companies. It's one standard that applies to the floodplain area and one standard only. But with respect to residents, that might be a singular person or a person who's building a home or a barn versus a company such as a major oil and gas producer, there are provisions in this current ordinance that make it less stressful for residents or individuals, and that primarily evolves around the application fee and the security costs for expenses. The first question that you asked, I don't clearly understand, because the Federal Emergency Management Agency's draft model ordinance, which was the nationwide ordinance that was promulgated in virtually every county in the United States, and certainly all the counties in West Virginia, is in fact the ordinance that Judge Sweeney held in part unconstitutional. And it is the same ordinance that had many errors in it with respect to language and grammar and citation to code and regulations that were not applicable to West Virginia or to the county of Doddridge. So this particular ordinance that's up for final vote tonight is an extremely better product than you were operating under in Doddridge County for many years. And in fact, the state of West Virginia, I believe, will take this product and probably in large part utilize the work that was performed here by the Doddridge County Commission and all the citizens with respect to comments, and request that most, if not all, the other counties in West Virginia adopt the same or similar language, with probably one exception, and that is the exception that we placed it within the ordinance with respect to notice, because Doddridge County uses as a notice mechanism the meeting minutes and the posting of the meeting minutes, which is a little different in some other counties. But I would say, in large part, the product that is presented tonight, if passed, will be the product that the state will take from county to county and utilize as a much better product than currently exists in all the counties, as was required by FEMA when they came to every county and said, you either pass this or you're not going to get federal emergency management aid, or your citizens will not be eligible for flood insurance under the FEMA program.
So you're telling me that what they passed in September, October 2011 is the exact copy of the federal floodplain ordinance. That it is the exact one. That I think it was a 25-page document versus the 460-some pages that's on the internet. That's the federal floodplain ordinance.
The ordinance that was passed in September of 2011 was in fact the model ordinance that FEMA brought to the state of West Virginia and requested that counties pass, under the threat that if you don't pass it, then you'll lose your eligibility for grant money and for flood insurance for your citizens.
So we couldn't just say, we accept your ordinance.
Well, we did.
I'm talking about the one that's nationally known, nationally recognized. The ordinance that is online as their floodplain ordinance.
That ordinance was held unconstitutional by a circuit court judge in your county.
Not 465-page ordinance.
I don't agree with you that there's a 465-page ordinance online with FEMA. The ordinance that is currently in place is the model ordinance that FEMA brought to West Virginia.
That's it.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if you had more. Jim Foster? Nope. Nope. Bob Warndorf?
Yes, sir. My name is Bob Warndorf. I represent, I'm the president of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. I also am a Dominion employee. With all due respect to Mr. Tennant, we're really concerned as an industry that this model ordinance will be adopted throughout the state. We have real concerns about this model ordinance. I have two documents I'm going to give the commission tonight or this afternoon. And one is a copy of the current floodplain ordinance that exists in Harrison County. The ordinance that exists there seems to work for all of us, residents, businesses, farms, industry. They also have another ordinance that that is currently in consideration for future use that may be considered a model ordinance as well. I've had lengthy discussions with the Harrison County floodplain coordinator. I know he has had extensive discussions with your floodplain coordinator in Douglas County, and our association respectfully requests that you take a serious look at these two ordinances and attempt to adopt them into your current ordinance. I'll stand ready to answer any questions. Again, their ordinance has not been litigated. Probably will not be, can't say it won't be litigated. My sense is that the current model ordinance that you're adopting will probably be litigated by our industry in the future. I'm not using that as a threat. I'm just saying that if it prevents us from rightfully extracting our minerals, our industry has a problem with that. And it goes well beyond the intended purpose of allowing people to gain floodplain insurance and to prevent flooding in the county.
I'm curious, what improvements do you think exist in the Harrison one versus?
Well, first of all, the notification issues. There's a lot of extensive notification issues that this ordinance that goes into great detail that are time-consuming and costly to industries and businesses that need to move in a judicious fashion to an attempt to do their business where they're going to do their business.
Okay.
It adds lengthy time and delay, unnecessary lengthy time and delay to the notification process.
What about the actual development of the floodplain area? How is it different? Or is it?
Well, it gives the opportunity for the floodplain manager, first of all, to do his job that typically does. It also could coordinate the efforts of the floodplain process that's taking place in Douglas County, along with the floodplain process that takes place in Harrison County. Not saying that Harrison County is better. I think there's provisions in that ordinance that I would like the commission to take a look at.
I'm curious, does the Harrison County ordinance have the cumulative effects language that this one does?
I'm not exactly sure. And again, I'm not sure if our current floodplain manager can answer that question. I know there's been a lot of dialogue.
The last version I saw, their tobacco laws did not include anything like that.
Well, and I can chime in on that issue. I will tell you that if you do not have the cumulative effect language within your ordinance, it will be contrary to the restrictions and requirements of FEMA, and thus you will be in violation of applicability for grants and flood insurance through FEMA if you do not. And in fact, when I had the conference call with the female representative from Philadelphia, who is the regional office that cares for West Virginia, she had said that in upcoming years, the cumulative effect issue is something that they're going to highlight for county floodplain managers to keep track of, because the 1 foot rule, which is the standard on adversely affecting adjacent properties or properties, is cumulative for the lifetime of the floodplain. So if industry A comes in and utilizes 7 inches of the floodplain with permission of the county commission, the floodplain manager, then that only leaves then the remaining 5 inches for further development in the floodplain area, and that's for whether you're a resident or a commercial entity. So for example, if company A comes in and uses all 12 inches of that rise of the base flood level, then forever in the floodplain region there will be no new development in the floodplain, because there has been a complete exhaustion of your 1 foot rule within that floodplain area. It's essentially now a first come, first served type rule. But the county commission and floodplain administrator should be on notice of the fact that if there is anticipated future development that the county is aware of, and I might add that in the current draft of this ordinance, there is a saving clause within the word anticipated development, that if the county is aware of future development that is planned, for example, if the Board of Education is going to put in a football field or a recreation area or a parking lot in the floodplain area, if the county knows that that's on the books, they could then reserve inches within the 1 foot rule to allow that development to go to finalization and deny a current permit applicant the utilization of the full 1 foot rule.
I don't quite understand how that would work, because if anticipated development has to be taken into account, how could you ever, as an individual industry, fully anticipate everything? Like, how would that work? I mean, you essentially are saying, if I want to use 12 inches, there's a supposition that someone else will want to use at least 1 inch in the future, so I just can't do it.
Well, it's not that you can just not do it. Your county commission will make a decision as the floodplain appeals board. Your floodplain manager will make a decision as to your utilization of the full 1 foot rule.
But you're telling the property owner, essentially, you cannot build on your property because someone else down the road might want to use theirs.
Well, let me say this. At the county level, there are 2 statutory provisions that allow the county commission to regulate the floodplain area. One is in Chapter 7, which is a limited ordinance. I call it a limited floodplain ordinance. That authority simply allows the county commission to govern the floodplain. In Chapter 8, there is a more extensive authorization for the county to not only do floodplain, but to do zoning and building permits. And in Chapter 8A, under that rule, the county would have to go through a comprehensive evaluation of the county to determine and to regulate what future anticipated development will occur in certain areas. At this point, Doddridge County, like many other counties in West Virginia, have not taken the authorization in Chapter 8A. I think out of the 55 counties, there's perhaps less than 5 that are operating under a county-wide building permit and zoning and variance scheme.
Right.
I think there are less than 5. But that, nevertheless, even though Doddridge County is operating under the Chapter 7 authorization for the limited authority to govern the floodplain, nevertheless, if this county commission, under this current ordinance, is aware of some sort of development that is planned for the good of the residents of Doddridge County, then they could decide to reserve inches within the 1 foot rule rather than allowing anyone to come in and utilize all the 1 foot rule under the cumulative effect section.
Does this ordinance put us under Chapter 8?
No, it does not.
May I ask a question?
I mean,
Can future use be hypothetical, or could it be something that it doesn't need to be something that is known in order to reserve inches in the floodplain, inches of use in the floodplain?
well, it's in the current draft under the definition. Let me just use the exact language.
Page, please.
It's page 3, it's number 3 under section 2.2.
Thank you.
And the language is, or an area wherein government has designated future development for the benefit of the residents of Doddridge County. So government, I would say that it has to be more than hypothetical in that regard.
May I ask? Mr.
Mary
Orndorff?
Ellen, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. In response to Mr. Orndorff's comments, I understand the need of industry to extract their minerals, but what concerns me is the fact that the people that have surface property that live in areas that are affected by excessive flooding or if raising the floodplain level with gas well pads or other stuff that's related to that, the potential for water pollution and water backing up affects my property and the water I drink.
Is that a question or is that a statement?
It's a comment. So the question is going to be, how is it that industry is looking at protecting surface owners in dealing with the speed with which industry wants to extract their mineral resources?
We're following the law.
Who wrote the law?
Not necessarily, because according to the law, we have had several violations of industry
And that's
applying
what
for
the law, they enforce the law.
floodplain permits.
Yeah, with all due respect to Mr. Warndorf, who is a fine gentleman, I've reviewed what Harrison County is doing, and with all due respect to the gentleman in Harrison County, who is perhaps one of the floodplain managers in the state of West Virginia, who knows the most about and has studied the area probably more than most. The current ordinance that is in Harrison County, while more workable for industry, is, in my opinion, contrary to the FEMA demands. And the current draft in Harrison County is, it looks like, and I haven't read it in its totality, but if the red is what they're adding into the ordinance, it appears to be closer to what is being proposed in Doddridge County, which has already been run by the state of West Virginia and a FEMA, and both entities have approved it as being not contrary to the minimum standards required by FEMA. And with all due respect, I mean, the notice provisions, while it will take more time, and I do realize that, that's the central focus of Judge Sweeney's ruling, that the FEMA ordinance was unconstitutional. And I hate to disappoint you, but when a judge tells you that an ordinance is unconstitutional because you didn't give appropriate notice to surface owners and to adjacent affected properties, then there has to be a process to do that. And that process will take time. And it will take a little more time in Doddridge County than in maybe other counties that have more media exposure, like a daily newspaper in the morning and the afternoon, to accomplish. But I think it's still, we've held those time frames and crunched them down to the bare minimum to hopefully move your permit as industry as quickly as possible through the process.
But with respect to you, I just wanted to make sure that our organization is on record with our statements that I made today. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Warndorf, where did this draft come from in Harrison County? Were they not approached by FEMA or I got to get it right, the Department of Homeland Security / Emergency Management gentlemen, and told that they had to approve that up?
I gave two ordinances that exist in Harrison County. One is a current existing ordinance. They are rewriting the current existing ordinance, which is the second draft that I gave to the county commission for consideration.
Is there any place that people can get a hold of those?
So, I'm sure you can go to Rick at Harrison.
He's on vacation for a few days, but yeah.
Harrison County, I could probably send you an email with it in it.
Okay.
It's about half the size of what we have.
I have a question for Mr. Kennedy. Can we not make amendments to this ordinance?
You sure could. As a county commission, after it's enacted, if there's something that comes up that the commission determines needs to be adjusted through amendment, it certainly can be amended. I would just encourage the county commission to first run that amendment by FEMA to make sure that it's not contrary to their requirements, because you don't want to be contrary, because you'll lose the capacity to be eligible for the grants and eligible for the residents to get flood insurance through the FEMA insurance program.
Thank you, sir.
May I make a comment on that?
Yes.
Rick McElroy is very familiar with the code end of these ordinances and all, and with how they evolve. And I know I've worked with him in he was trying to condense mainly, make it as few pages as possible and make it as simple as possible in their new draft ordinance. And I believe what you see in front of you will reflect where he felt from the code end of it things were being hit different times and things would be eliminated here because they were being covered in a different area.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, Mariana, you're next.
I would like to thank the county commissioners for allowing local residents to voice their opinions and to listening to some of the, and utilizing some of the comments that we've made. And I would also like to ask you to look very closely at whatever decisions that you make. And I would also like to ask if you have read the latest version.
Yes.
Shirley? Okay. But once again, thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you. RJ? RJ? You're on the agenda. You're down here towards the bottom. If you want to present pictures or anything like that, you can hold it till then.
Okay.
But if you have public comment now, we'll take it.
Well, I'd have to go get some of the pictures to show, what we're doing. And
Well, we'll take those pictures whenever you come up on the agenda item here in a little bit.
okay, and if anybody else has not been over to see what we have, if y'all like to come over and look and see some of the presentation we have, it'd be a good time at the meeting.
Thank you. Alicia Wright. Betty Robinson. Loris Hinter.
Okay, probably I've missed some of these meetings, so I really don't know what he's exactly talking about grants. But I did check with FEMA. In Long Beach County, so far as FEMA insurance, we have 57 policies. And West Union has a separate flood ordinance, according to FEMA, than what we've had. We're calling this a Long Beach County. But a municipality has the right to have their own flood ordinance, and there is one in West Union, according to the man who spoke last time. 10 households in West Union have FEMA insurance. So we're looking at 67 households in Long Beach County that has brought a lot of this about. Now, I don't know what the grant is. Is this a grant when you have destroyed, things have been destroyed, or what are you talking about?
Generally, it is in that area. If there has been a massive emergency flood, that the grant would come after the flood event.
And in this, if you do have insurance with FEMA, they come in and I'm talking about actual people like interviewed. They said that they paid $400 a year FEMA insurance. FEMA came 2 months later, and we can't change any of this, 2 months later, and offered them a 12% loan. But we're talking about 67 families. 57 of them are out in Long Beach County, 10 are in West Union. And West Union has its own flood ordinance. Now this is what the FEMA man told me. And he also sent it to me. I didn't wait.
May I comment on that? I believe that the town has one of the old ordinances, and that will have to be updated. They are in an intergovernmental agreement with the county. I don't know if that would retroactively make our ordinance their ordinance, or if they need to adopt this new ordinance once we do. That's something we'll have to discuss. But there's an intergovernmental agreement.
Charleston has their own. Other big cities have their own. They don't have to do what the county.
Municipalities are separate from the counties. Municipalities and the counties are two separate entities when it comes to this ordinance. And if the town of West Union wanted to adopt a totally different ordinance, I suppose they can do it. Now, whether we can enter an intergovernmental agreement with them under two ordinances, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know anything.
Yeah, just in response to the latter part of the grant issue, and this is my own personal experience. I know back in the 2004 flood, for example, that grossly flooded a recreational park that was privately owned, but we had a not-for-profit baseball organization on that park that built some buildings and took care of the fields and the fencing. That when FEMA came in, they were in there within days of that event, and there was payment that was made on a percentage basis related to how much of it was public versus private. Didn't cover the private end of it, but for the public portion of the park, there was a cash payment made rather than a loan. So in that case, at least my personal experience is that FEMA acted quickly and that actual cash was paid so that on at least the public side of the park, that fencing could be repurchased and constructed and put the park back into place before the baseball season began. So I had a little bit different experience with FEMA than you may have had.
Then we have, I would like to ask the commission to consider this. In Dogwich County, I think that you can find floodplain everywhere. Maybe even having things in the floodplain. We generally have a hill, a creek, a road, and a house someplace in between. In a lot of Dogwich County. And you know as well as I do that there are going to be high waters. And I think this is something we should consider before we start asking people to make all these other sacrifices. And then some of this could be a real headache. And also, when I read this, it says that if you, well, part of my house was in Lewis County and part of Dogwich, I'm going to follow Dogwich County rules. I don't think that would fly. If I'm wrong, he can correct me, but I think that's what I read in this.
I don't believe that's actually part of the ordinance.
There's one section there that says,
Well, there-
we'll go by Dogwich's rules.
No, I think what you're referring to, ma'am, is that if there is a floodplain application for permitting that is in Doddridge County, on property in Doddridge County, that if that raise in water would affect properties either upstream or downstream that are outside of Doddridge County, that you still, as the permit applicant, would have to give notice to those properties even though they're not in Doddridge County. That's the only language that I recall in the ordinance that speaks to that issue.
One part, if you read it.
Well, I've read it a few times. With all due respect, I don't recall. And admittedly, I know that there's not a provision in this ordinance that speaks of a house being built where the house straddles a county line.
But it could.
Yeah, it could. I mean, it could, like our, West Virginia, there are certain areas of our eastern part of our state that